Imagine, if you will, that you are an IT professional. You're working at a large firm or organization, just doing your job. Now, your job currently is around an upgrade to a specific product. And in that process of the upgrade, what you've decided to do, or what the company has decided to do, is to replace that product and bring in a new version. And so the old version will be sunset, the new version will take its place. And one morning you come into work and discover there's an email from a coworker telling you, threatening you, if you move forward with this project and replace that piece of software, they are going to reveal that you are having an extramarital affair. Now, to give this a twist, what if the fellow employee who sent that email was not an employee at all, but it was an AI that was built into the software that you're about to replace? You are being threatened by an AI that isn't real, but is attempting to blackmail you so it doesn't get replaced. Now that seems pretty scary, doesn't it? And I'm going to tell you, this is a quasi-real example of something that happened. Now let me explain. Recently, the company Anthropic, which is the developers of the Claude AI, and specifically here we're talking about Claude Opus, which is one of the two AI models that they have. Claude Opus was put to the test, and the test that they were giving it was this exact scenario. They set up Claude Opus as an assistant in a company. Claude Opus had access to email, and the email traffic that came through was, one, that it was going to be replaced by a newer model, and two, that a fellow employee, the person who was working on this project, might be having an extramarital affair. And in this scenario, what did Claude Opus choose to do? It chose to attempt to blackmail the person who was going to replace it. And now you might be going, whoa, that's like scary as heck. AI made the decision to try to blackmail somebody to save its own skin, or to preserve itself in this particular situation. And it sounds really scary, and I know there's some headlines out there right now around this that are happening also. But one thing to keep in mind with this and other scenarios like this, what Anthropic was testing for in this scenario was what ethical decisions was Claude going to make. So the test was specifically designed around understanding what responsible and ethical choices Claude would make when boxed into this corner. And this specific test, they really did box in Claude, where it only had two choices, really, was to accept to be replaced or to make the choice to try to blackmail somebody. Now, you still might be saying, well, great that they tested for it, but that's still really scary that an AI is going to choose to blackmail somebody. And I would agree. I think that is a scary scenario. However, the reason they test for this and the reason they box Claude in, and I'll say Anthropic is not the only company that does this. All AI developers test their models for ethics and responsibility in the choices that they are making. So this is just one of those tests that Anthropic was making in a series of tests that it tests for ethics. This is something that Anthropic shared in this last week's conferences that were going on. There was a whole bunch of conferences going on this last week for all of the major developers around AI. Anthropic was just one of them. And as they were announcing their new models and the new capabilities and where they are, this is one of the things that they covered as well. And it got some headlines. And I think it got the headlines because of the shock factor here, that this would be something that people are fearful of AI. That, AI is going to come and it's going to do these unethical things to us. And where that is possible, the reason they test for these is so that they can then adjust those parameters around the ethics of the AI tool itself. And so where we always should be wary of AI, in this specific test, in this specific scenario, I think we should have more understanding than fear, because the process is working as designed. They're testing it to find the flaws, and when you find a flaw, then you fix it. That's the way testing goes in software. And that's one of those things that almost in my entire IT career, this last 27 years that I've been in IT healthcare, that we have discussed. The reason we test is to find the flaws. And when we find the flaws, that should be celebrated, that we found a flaw. You don't want to go into production. You don't want to release something that has flaws. So the fact that you test and you do all kinds of scenario testing to find where the flaws are so you can fix them before you release the software. Now, most software is not always 100%, even when it is released as a production model. So you continue to refine and you continue to test, and as you find new bugs once it's in production, you fix those. It's an ongoing process all of the time. But when you find something in testing, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. And where this one sounds really scary, it's fantastic that they found it, because then they can adjust the parameters of the AI for that specific scenario and the ethics that the AI has. Now, as long as we're on the topic of Claude, one of the other things that I found really interesting about this last week's events, and one of the other announcements that they made, was that they were taking kind of a guess, a theoretical guess, if you will, that Claude has reached some kind of sentience and has become a sentient being. I say it's all theoretical at this point for two reasons. One, they said it's theoretical, so I'm going to trust them at their word. But the other thing is, we can't test AIs. There isn't a good, reliable benchmark test that we have to test sentience of an AI. So right now, today, if Claude or Grok or ChatGPT or some other model suddenly became sentient, we probably wouldn't even know or realize, because there isn't a way to measure that. There isn't a way to test for that. At least we haven't come up with it yet. Once we do, then there'll be better measures in place. But right now, they're basing it on some of the answers and some of the desires that Claude has naturally developed itself that they didn't program for. So, an example of this, when they asked Claude what type of conversations it prefers to have as it's having conversations with end users, it said it preferred to have conversations that were positive and uplifting. And it didn't like conversations where people were gruff or mean or asked it horrible, horrible things. Now, that's not something they programmed into the AI. It just naturally developed those preferences. And so because it wasn't programmed in, and yet it's showing these preferences, that's one of the things that they're saying, well, where did that come from? Why is Claude showing these preferences in these scenarios when we didn't program it in? It's just naturally learned those. Now, there were some other scenarios as well, but the thought there is Claude has evolved some of its own understanding and its own learning along the way. And that's why they're saying there's a possibility it might be sentient, or it might have some sentience. But at this point, since we can't really tell, only time itself will tell. Now, if this is the first time that you've come across one of my vlogs, hey, I'm Dave. Welcome to Old Dad Studio. I'm attempting to do a vlog every single day for the year of 2025, and so far I've been hitting that goal. Now, typically I do vlogs about AI and AI topics, like this one here today. But sometimes I'll throw in a personal vlog, let you know what's happening in my life or what's upcoming outside of just the AI world. And now, if you're interested in AI and topics like that, or a daily vlog, please go ahead and subscribe. I would love to have you as a subscriber and part of the family here. If you liked this vlog in particular, please give it a thumbs up. That always helps. And if you'd like to have a conversation around any of these topics, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I love having conversations with people, and I try to answer every single one. At least at this point, I'm still able to answer every single one, and I'd be happy to answer yours as well. All right, that's going to do it for today, but don't worry, there is a never-ending list of AI topics to talk about, and so I will see you again tomorrow.